Okay, so the recording started. I've already gone through the ground rules. Welcome to Make the Cut and Popup Card Studio question and answer webinar. Tonight is February 11th, 2014. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to Julie and Susan who are helping in the background. Each week I post a thread on the forum to handle questions for the webinar, and that's where we're going to get started tonight. So the first question is more on the Make the Cut side. It's from Artie Adventures, and I apologize. I think they sent me an email, so I should know their name, but I don't. But oh, there it is, Jane. Sorry, Jane. By the way, if you're here, go ahead and let the say that you're here, so we know that if you have questions, we'll track it a little bit closer. So her question is taking a photo and tracing it to make it either silhouette or pictures made from the shadows. So I'm going to go real quick and show I should have had this up ready to go, sorry. I should have been on the right directory here. Give me just a second. Come on. Okay. So this is the original an example of the file that she would like to do, either make it a silhouette or sort of a shadow file. And I think what you're talking about is more like if you look at some of the recent posts from Paper Cuts. I think it's something similar to that. So that's what I'm going on. If it's not that case, let me know. But let me just talk about the photos. So if you have control over the photos or taking the photograph, which would be even better, and you want to make a good silhouette, basically you'd want, this is a very difficult photograph to do that too. And the reason is it's sort of grainy. So that's one issue. It's not super focused. And that's not a problem in itself. The bigger issue is, in essence, the background has a lot of the same colors as what you're trying to work with. And there's a lot of, fluffiness here, or whatever you want to call it, where the hairs stick out, which adds to the characteristics of the dogs. So you don't want to lose them. You don't want necessarily to smooth them out, but it makes it difficult. So I'll show you a couple different things with this, but as we go, let me just show you some examples of what I would do either with a photo editing program or some of the stuff you could do and Make the Cut as well, but that's it's not necessarily the best way to do it, trying to do raster image editing. But ideally, if you could have, especially if you wanted just a straight silhouette, if you could have them in front of like a bright background, in front of a window or sliding glass door or something, or have a very consistent background that has not many of the colors of the subject, that helps. You can deal and work around some of the other objects in the picture, but if you can even put it to where you have just your subject in the picture, that'd be great. And also anytime you bring in a raster image into Make the Cut, the larger it is on the outside, the more work it's going to have to do to trace it. So there's, this is I forget what size this picture is off the top of my head. 1936 by 2592. So it's a little bit big for bringing in and Make the Cut. So again, I would sort of do some pre-processing on this. And if this is the only one I had to work with, I would do something like this. So there's the original photograph. And here is I did a quick, and I mean a quick edit, and I use GIMP, G-I-M-P. It's an open source raster image program. I could do something very similar to this and Make the Cut as well. But, and as you can see, I was real quick around the edges. I did not try to get the real characteristics of the the hair sticking out. But in essence, what I wanted to show you is I basically took out the background. And try to keep some of the characteristics. So again, here was the original picture, and you can see, especially here, I sort of lumped them all together. But if you take your time in the pre-editing or pre-processing editing and removing the background, you could do this. Also, if you had a background that was a different color, it would take a lot of the work out of it for you, whether you do it in Make the Cut or you do it in raster image programming. Oops, wrong directions. So that's one direction, and that's using leaving it in color. And I also lowered the resolution on this. So this is a smaller. It's only 1024 by 1371 pixels. I then will, and I'll talk about these later on. And then also in the raster image programming, I did I turned it in black and white. I desaturated it, and then, excuse me, told it to basically posterize it into 4 colors. And then I did one step further, and I'll explain this again. Basically, it's this picture is the same as that picture, only added a blur to it, and I'll explain that when I go to it. So these are the photographs that I'll be working with. First, I'll bring this big one in. It's going to take a little bit just because it's pretty huge. Well, it's not super huge, but it is big enough that the initial trace on it's going to take a little bit of time, and I've got to find it. For some reason, the date on that one was different. Okay, so as soon as I try to bring it in, you can see it's tracing, so it's going to take a little bit of time here. So I'll just let it do the initial thing here. So this is, a couple things you can see. It's taking up much more than the 12 by 12 mat. So that's, one of the things is you can see it's coming in at basically 26, almost 27 inches by 36 inches, given that current DPI, etc. So it's probably a little bit bigger than you want to work with originally, and that's why I said if you could pre-process it down. You can also, change the scale here. But again, the more you get it to where you want it before you bring it in to make the cut, I think the happier you'll be with the results. So I'm going to sort of do this real quick. I'm going to sort of scale it down so it'll just scan a little bit faster when I do things. But you can see here with the standard pixel tracing, it's picking up, colors from the the hairs, the fur, but as well as part of the background, part of the basket, and that kind of stuff. And so no matter where you move these, and I'll sort of do it in bigger chunks. So I'm lowering it. You can see, okay, with it really low, I'm only picking up part of the information on the dog. And again, the problem here is I go from almost white, to almost black, and the same colors are in the background. So just by doing threshold, it's going to be difficult to do anything. Let's go the other side of it. Here I'll pick up more of the dog, but I also pick up more of the background. So if I lower this to try to get less of the background, I get less of the dog. And so you can see it's sort of this back and forth battle, and that you would probably not win very easily in this with this picture as it is. So that's why I suggest that we'll now take the first one, which is the color one here, where I've got rid of the background. When you do this, and because it's smaller, it fits better. Let me do one more thing here. Let me just go ahead and go to contrast match so we can see a little bit better. Color one. So you can see that we're not dealing with any of the background stuff. So if I wanted a pure silhouette type of situation, there's two ways I can handle that. I could put the luminance, the pixel trace by luminance up to a higher number, say we'll try like 240. I could probably do it almost all the way up. And even with this, let's go up to 250. Even if you don't get all the spots in between, as long as you have a background, a complete outline, you can go ahead and do blackout and apply, and then you get that silhouette, pure silhouette. The easier way, especially if you pre-process the picture and you have the choice, is when I did this, I actually made the background transparent. This is a PNG file. So it actually would have been easier so let me undo that one, is to actually come in and just say you want to trace by threshold, and you'll see that I get pretty much the same thing. So that gives you just the pure black silhouette style picture. And again, I mean, this is, I don't know how large you would make it, but obviously because I did sort of a quick trace here, this looks kind of funky, but at least you can, make out that it's a dog. Perhaps not that particular dog because my tracing didn't, I wasn't careful on my tracing, but it gives you an idea of what you can do. The other thing you can do as far as, and you can do this with the color one, so let me stay with the color one. Oops, I don't want to paste. If you want sort of that layered look of multiple, like, maybe 3 or 4 shades of gray to sort of layer on top of each other, you can do that with the color photograph. You can sort of see already we get almost with just the 2 black and white, you get almost enough that it doesn't get, because it's so light here, you don't get quite the detail you want, but you can fool around with it. But if you wanted more than 2 layers, more than just black and white, you could start out with something, say, like, I'll say 64. So I'm going to import, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. And I'm going to continue. And then the next one I might do 128. Apply changes. Import, continue trace. Maybe 196. So you see I'm getting more and more of the pieces here. And then finally, let's go up to, like, what do we have, like 250 before, I think was the full one, right? Apply. That's almost the whole thing. So import. Finish. Let me go. I'm going to get rid of this one right here. And I'm going to reverse here and then just go to each its own. So here's my different layers. So I'm going to make the bottom layer black, this layer darker gray, this layer a little bit lighter gray, and then this layer even lighter gray. And I probably did that backwards. Yes, that's the negative. So let me undo that for a minute. Let's not reverse it. Let's try it this way. Oops. To each its own. Let's do this light, or actually that should be almost white. Middle gray, dark gray, black. And okay, I'm still doing this backwards. There we go, getting closer. Should have reversed it, but just do the different, I did the color scheme wrong. So you can see that sort of gives you a layered, look. Oops. I'll try to move it up on the picture here a little bit. Not necessarily going to be the greatest because you can see there's a lot of detail here, a lot of specs that you may not want to try to cut out in vinyl or paper or whatever you're doing. Again, when you do the tracing, and I'll do that with the next piece here, you can limit this, you can remove some of the minor small pieces, but you'll still get kind of a real wavy edge and stuff. So that's with the color, using the color photograph without doing anything other than removing the background. The other way you can do it is actually do it like I did. I pre-processed it with black and white and posterized it, so I had the raster image program do all that processing for me. Same thing here, except this one I would probably go by color because I already have the colors associated. So I can do the the black, the dark gray, the light gray, and white. So we can do the white. And this is how I would despeckle some of it. So this will help with some of the small pieces. Sorry. I didn't apply the first time, so you can't really compare. So this is going to be the white, including the background, and we can get rid of the background if we want. Import, continue tracing. Now we go with the light gray. Again, I've gotten rid of a lot of the little pieces, but I'm still going to have those jagged edges. import, continue tracing, the darker gray, import, continue tracing, and finally the black. And the reason I can do that is because I had the raster image program do all the processing. So you can see this is a little bit better. I shouldn't say better. This is a little bit different way, and you can see that because I got rid of some of the small pieces, sometimes the white shows up now where I wouldn't necessarily, like the white area in here doesn't show up here. It's because I got rid of those small pieces. Okay. So the last one is pre-processing it and doing a little. Actually, let me go to contrast again. Sorry. I pre-processed it and I did a blur, and so we're going to open that up, and you can see here that because of the blur, the edges are a little bit softer. So when I do the tracing in the same way, again, I would probably do by color. Start with the white. The white I'm going to leave at the default tolerance of 5. And import, continue. But the other colors, well, actually, let me go ahead and do this. I'll leave it at the default tolerance of 5, and you'll see why you may not want to do that. So I'm going to do that. But you can see already I have the edges are a little bit smoother because of that blurring, the blurring sort of softened the edges, I guess is the right word. Again, that was done in a raster image program. Dark gray, import, and finally the black. And the reason why you may not want to leave that default threshold is because of the blur. I'm not going to have 4 specific colors like I did in the original one. Excuse me, not the original one, but the black and white one, the pure black and white one. I had, I'm sorry, not the pure black and white one, but the black and white without any blurring. And so you can see that I'm getting white areas around these places because those sort of fell out of that threshold error. So that you might like that effect, but it adds white where there really shouldn't be any white if you want to try to be a little bit purer. So the way that I would adjust it is bring in the same photograph, do by color, leave the white as white. With no changes, so you can leave the tolerance there. But then for the other ones, so let's do the light gray, we'll up the tolerance to, say, I don't know, 15, and see how that looks. And that way it'll sort of bleed out a little bit further in the edges, and it won't leave any of the white there. And you'll see that when we bring everything in here. So I'm going to import the darker gray. Same thing. It now stays at 15 because that's the last one I used. So you can see already I don't have the white outline between the dark gray and the white and the lighter gray. Oops, I think I already did that one, didn't I? Yeah. And then the black. Import, finish tracing. So you still have a little bit, some of the smaller pieces here that you may want to, edit out, but you should get a general idea. Let me just lock these so we don't see everything around them. How you could do it. I sort of like this effect. That's a little bit closer to, one of these two. Like those. But again, I did some of the pre-processing, or I did all the pre-processing in a raster image editor because that's what they were made for. It's very easy to do that. And there's lots of tutorials out there, not only for GIMP, for Photoshop, for PaintShop Pro, for Paint.net. There's probably tutorials out there how to do it with just regular paint that comes with most window programs. But anyway, so that's how you could do the layer with. You might want to massage it to get it better, or cleaner cuts, but at least that gives you a general idea. But again, the main thing, if I can just sort of re-emphasize here, is it's difficult when you start with a photograph like this. There's, there's not a defined line between the subject and the background. Even where it's a high contrast, you can, if I zoom in here, you can see it's kind of fuzzy. There's not a good defined line, and part of that is the graininess of the photo. Part of it is the focus of the photo, but a lot of the problems exist because of the background of the photo compared to the subject matter. So, Jane, was that Jane? Jane, are you on, and did that answer at least some of your questions?
I don't see a Jane on.
Okay. So, let's see, I don't think she... So, Jane, if you're not on, which, yeah, I don't see a Jane either, hopefully you'll see the recording of this when it's posted. If you do have questions, you can either you can email me again, or post another more specific question with photo, or whatever you're working with, and we can do it next week as well. So do we have people on? Because I don't there's no questions, is there?
There's no questions, no.
Okay.
We're too busy listening.
Yeah, I guess. So hopefully that'll give you, and we did do other webinars on this probably a year or so ago, not on dogs, but on sort of the subject matter of, doing the, let me get my, doing this sort of layered look. Once Paper Cuts started putting his stuff on, people wanted to know how to do it just purely and make the cut, and we went over a couple of those ideas. More with taking a color photograph and just doing it straight from the color photograph, but again, it's the technique's there. He does have some tutorials. He switched from WordPress to his own website, and it doesn't look like the tutorials are back up again. But in one of his recent posts, he did say if people were interested, let him know, and he would, show the tutorial. But he uses, he doesn't use just Make the Cut. I believe he does most of his work in a raster image program. I forget off the top of my head which one, but he does some really fine work, and he's very, he does a lot more pre-processing before he does the cutting. But you'll get, he's got some good examples of the type of work you can do. Okay, so since there's no questions on that, we'll go on to the next question. So the next question was actually resolved, so thank you to Melanie, who worked with Misi. Basically, it was a how to get it to cut out on the silhouette the way you think it's going to cut out. She was having some problems with the lining, and it ended up being one of the key things is when you cut with Silhouette Studio, Cut Project, Silhouette Studio. I probably shouldn't have tried to cut this one because I got a lot of paths. But so you want to make sure that this is checked. If you're using a mat, you want to make sure that using Carrier Mat is checked on the Silhouette plugin. And you also want to make sure on the Silhouette machine, whether it's I know the SD has it and the Cameo has it. I'm assuming the Portrait has it as well. It'll say something like load mat as opposed to load material. So you want to make sure the machine and Make the Cut thinks it's loading the mat, and they match. Those two things match. Otherwise, where it cuts or prints, depending on what you have in your holder, will be off from what you may think it should be. So that's that. Okay. Yeah, that's sort of an off-topic question, so we'll do that after we go through these other ones. Okay, so this question is sort of answered, and real quick, she posted, there's a Rob from ScrappyDoo.com had a video on placing or setting up your mat, and that video is actually broken. So you'll actually have to contact Rob at ScrappyDoo or ScrappyDoo.support. The title is called "Make the Cut." This works. The ads work, but then the video itself doesn't work. So this is the title of it, but I would contact ScrappyDoo and let them know it'll come up with an error eventually. An error occurred. So he's got to do something at his end. I don't know if something got corrupted or moved or whatever. I don't think it's moved, because if you go through, you can see sort of the frames, but you can't, as soon as you try to move there before it gives you an error, it actually keeps on flipping back. So that's a YouTube or ScrappyDoo question. Okay, so the next question in the post is from Neely, and she wants to do, I'll sort of show this one. She wants to do a pop-up card like this. It ended up, it started being a card. This is the outside of the card, and then this is, the inside. This would not be done in Popup Card Studio, because this is more of a, it's not a true, it's not a 90-degree angular type of pop-up. This is one of those, you see a lot of these for somebody had done an umbrella right when PCS was released, asked about how you would do an umbrella. A lot of these are like hearts. You can do this. So I'm going to show real quick how you do this. This again would be in Make the Cut directly, and I'm going to cheat. I couldn't find this guy's face, and I didn't really want to trace with this, and that really wasn't the purpose of it. It's how would you do something like this given some sort of project. So I came up and I found. Let's see. I did find a picture. If I got rid of my questions, I could see my pictures. Here we go. So here's the picture I'm going to use. Right, very close, very close to this guy. Right. Oops, sorry. Right, very sort of close. Bow tie, smiling face, no ears, no hair, but the general idea. Anyway, I'm going to bring this in as, in essence, a print and cut, but again, you can do it as paper piecing, whatever, or not paper piecing, but printing, doing it with basic shapes and printing it. Anyway, the idea is how would you do this bow tie? And if you look closely, it's basically a triangular. So there's a fold here and a fold here. Those are two valley folds. And a mountain fold, and this mountain fold is basically in line with where the card folds, and same thing on this side. So mountain fold to where the card folds as a normal valley fold here, and then these angular fold lines that go and meet here in the middle. Okay. So let's see. We did a copy of this, I think. So we'll go to Make the Cut. I'm going to do a trace from my clipboard. And I'm just going to get a big chunk of this. We'll smooth it out a little bit here. There we go. So it's not a perfect trace, but that's okay. That's the purpose of this, and how to trace things and do that. So we're going to bring him in, finish tracing. I'm going to do a break, because all I really want is this guy, and I'm going to delete the rest of these. And then you would have some, so let me go ahead and bring in a square, just as sort of our base card. So let's say this is going to be 8 by 11. So 8 wide, 11 high. We'll put this up at 1. Oops. Now we'll do 0.5. If I could type, it'd be better. I didn't undo that, did I? So this should actually be 8.5. There we go. With this, we know that this is basically going to be an 8-inch wide card. It could be any size. Let me make it smaller. Let's do an 8.5 by 4 1/4, or 5.5 by 8.5. How's that look? That's a little bit better size card. So in a normal card, this would be folded, right down the center. So I'm going to go ahead and start a score line layer. And, we'll go ahead and put let's go ahead and snap here for a minute. And this should be 4 1/4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, we're going to draw a line basically from here to here. So that's my score lines. This is my card. So let's go ahead and put him on the right, on his own layer, and get rid of the extra one. Okay, so this is my card, score lines, and this is going to be my guy. So in essence, I want, I'll make him a little bit bigger. Oops. Let's make him a little bit bigger. Not that big, because we need this bow tie right on the, somewhere in the middle there. Okay, so we'll first sort of horizontally or vertically line them up so they're centered there. And then I'm going to take this guy, let me go ahead and lock him for a moment. In essence, all you want to do is make sure that wherever you want sorry, wrong picture, wherever you want this fold to be, so you're going to have, a diagonal fold above and below it on both sides, this, in essence, should line up with where you're going to fold your card, because that's what's going to make it pop. Let me go ahead and get rid of this one. So in this case, I'm doing the bow tie, so I want, in essence, the center of the bow tie horizontally to be lined up on the score line here. Does that make sense to everybody? And let me just go ahead and turn on fill in that line, so we should be able to see the line there. And again, it's not super critical, because we're going to line up, we're going to make our own lines anyway. So we have this score line, and this line, and we'll actually make a, when this, we're not going to want to actually cut the face out, obviously. So that's why this is going to be a print and cut. But in essence, we want the edge of the bow tie in this case is going to be cut. So where it cuts across the center score line is where on one side, on the outside it's going to be valley fold, and on the bow tie it's going to be a mountain fold. So we don't have to make separate score lines for that, if that makes sense. So we just want to make the score lines, in essence, for the two diagonals on both sides. And since it's symmetric, I'm going to do it an easy way. I'm going to take my snapping off right at the moment, because I don't care. And again, you can't have a curved score line, so you're going to have to sort of guess where you want your pop-up to be. It's to give it dimension. It's not necessary to make the bow tie exactly what pops out. If that's what you want, then you're going to have to make the edge of the bow tie, exactly a smooth line, if that makes sense. So we're going to just sort of simulate here, not simulate, we're going to say we want, this to be one of the angles, and then maybe somewhere like around here should be the angle, and I think what I'm going to do is I want to move this one up a little bit. Sorry, I got to unlock that. I had this layer selected, so when I added lines, it added it to this layer instead of the layer that I wanted in. So I'm going to go to edit. I have to unlock that so I can get to these two lines, and I can eventually get to them by flipping through. I'm doing a shift tab. We'll go through all the shapes. I'm going to Control X, select this and do Control-Shift-V, and it puts it back exactly where I had it. And then I'm going to find the other one, which is that one, Control-X, make sure that's highlighted, Control-Shift-V, and now I can lock this one up. And actually I'll make them disappear for the moment, or it disappear, and I'll lock that one up. So I'm just going to edit this line here, just so, ideally you probably want the intersection here to be right on the fold line. Not 100% required. I don't want to lock that one because I want to edit it. And I curve that a little bit, so I don't want to do that either. Convert to line and move that up just so it should intersect a little bit there. And again, you can fool around with it. Okay, so those are our score lines, and they're on the score line layer. So now what we have to do is add the cuts so that you can make this a mountain fold instead of a valley fold, and then in essence crease those out. And so I would create another layer. It's going to be our cut lines. You can go ahead and lock these at this point in time. And then I would you can do a straight line between the two and then curve it. And you want to get them, make sure they line up. But then what I would do is just curve this, however way. Maybe, bring in the center. Try that again. Bring in the center, and curve this out a little bit. Sorry, I double-clicked instead of just single-click. Curve this out. Curve this out a little bit. However you want the cut edge of the bow tie to be. Same thing on this side. Bring the center in a little bit. Sorry. We had the outside edge come out. Sorry. And you can have it match the, try to match more of the print if you want. But there you have it. So now if you were to, let's make this we don't want a yellow background because he's yellow. Let's just do a gray background. Sorry, I wanted to undo him. So you would actually do a print and cut. You'd print this out, and probably want to leave it white since my outline here is white. But you would print that, but then when you cut it, let's actually make these dash so you can sort of see what the cut lines will be. So you'll see what happens is this will cut across the center fold line. So this will be a valley fold here and valley fold here. But then on the inside of the cut lines, these will be a mountain fold, and this will be a valley fold, valley fold, valley fold, valley fold. So when you fold it, you'll get this triangular pop-out type of thing. When it's 90-degree folded. When you fold it all the way down, it would be flat, and when you fold it all the way open, it would look like this. So that's how I would do that one. Obviously not necessarily a smiley face guy, but I just, whatever your design is, shape is. So do we have questions on that?
Nope. No questions.
Okie doke. Boy, we do have people here, right? Maybe you're all feeling sorry for me with the way my voice sounds. Okay, so that question's done. So at this point, since there's no questions on what we've covered so far, we'll continue with the questions, and we're going to have Susan's going to demonstrate this, how to do the piano keyboard. Somebody had done that recently in PCS, Popup Card Studio. She's also going to talk, last week somebody asked about a rocking chair. She'll cover that quickly. And then she'll handle this. Now, Bill, I noticed that you just, actually Bill's not on, I don't think, but he sent me an email, so I'll see if he sent me a new update. But she'll answer talking about how to get rid of some extra pieces that may or may not be what Bill was asking about here. So, Susan, are you ready to go?
I am ready.
Okay, so Susan is coming up.
Okay.
And I'll let you know when we see your screen. Okay, we see your screen. I'm going on mute.
Okay. Well, we'll start with the piano. So we'll start on what my card size is. I forget what my card size was. My card size was 6 inches wide by 5 high. So we'll start on a 2-inch plane, and we will bring in a square, and that square I want to make 0.5 wide by, because it's 2 inches from the back and I want the key to be 0.5 high, I go to 2.5 and no, what I wanted is 2.25, and then I put that on the bottom plane just to double check that I'm doing that wrong. No, accept. How many do I undo? Sorry. No, I do want it 2.5. Sorry. Okay, so what that is going to be is when I fold that back to the back is going to be the bottom lot of the keys. But first off, we want to bring in some more of these. So with that highlighted and on the bottom plane, I go duplicate, and we see how many we can get across there with just a little a spacing between, and we'll go accept. Now with them highlighted, we'll go center them, so that's what we have so far, and then with them highlighted we go fold back, and it'll fold back to the back of the plane. So now we have them anchored to the back of the plane, and that's our first lot of keys. Now with the keyboard we want the black keys as well, so now we'll go to a plane of 1.5 and just check, yep, 1.5, and we'll bring in another square, and we want that 0.5 or 0.45 wide. Now this is 1.5 from the back, and I wanted another 1/4 of an inch up from these keys, so that's 1.75. 1.75, enter. Then we bring that above these keys, and we'll take this to the bottom plane, which will take it to the next plane down, which I had them above the key, so it's taken them to the keys. Now we put that where sort of in the center of the first 2 keys. Then with that selected, we go duplicate, and we want to this is where you use your using your space keys, and you can sort of get an idea of what's between each one. And we don't need the last one, so we go accept. Now they're in the right spot and they're on that bottommost plane. Now first 2, and we take away the next key, we go with that selected, you go delete, you have 3, next one selected, you go delete. So this is the black keys with the keys in between, and then you go fold back, accept, and that's all there is to doing the card. So I hope that explains how to make that card. Is there any questions on that? Did I go too fast?
I don't see any questions.
Can you show how to delete? You did delete something there.
Yeah, well,
Could you show again?
Yep. You mean deleting this? With that selected, I just push the delete key on my keyboard, or with that selected, and with that one selected, I could just click cut. And then you go 1, 2, 3 across, select that one and go cut, or delete on the keyboard as I normally use. Then select them and do a fallback. And you go accept. Is that what you meant, Julie?
Yes, and Diane would like to know, how do you turn them to black keys?
Well, you can turn them to black keys on. You can't physically. You can turn them to black keys for just visual look by selecting them and clicking on this color down the bottom, and your first one, fill color, and you go black, but that does not print and cut from here. So what you'd have to do is cut and paste these over to your make the cut file. Do you want me to do that?
Could you show how you would copy that black key before you fold it back to take it over to make the cut, in case you want to cut out the black pieces separately?
So yeah, show how you would do it and make the cut.
Yep. Okay, so what I do, okay, before you, hang on, no, sorry, hold the D key down to select that plane. You go copy them. Now, copying them from here means they're going to be in exactly the same place when you get over to make the cut. So you go copy, then you go over to make the cut, and you go paste in place. I use this icon, or you can go up here and go paste in place, or Control-Shift-V. Okay, so they're ready for bringing in the other. So what I would do here, I will do the fold back, except I think I better do the print preview just to check. Okay, so that worked. So now we turn it into an export, project render, and save as SVG. Okay. And then we go over to make the cut, and we bring in SVG, and what I do is change that to white, bring this above the other one, and you place this, using the control to zoom in and the mouse wheel, and you put that in place. And then if you do a print and cut, print preview, of course, I didn't change it to black. Now if I do a print preview, that'll be your print screen, and then you do your cut as normal. So
You be sure to hide those black keys when you go to cut,
that's right.
or it'll cut them out.
So when you go after you did your print preview, you go thing, and then you do your cut. However you do it, if you put these onto each its own, and however you like to cut or score. If you just, you usually get that in your own way. So yes. So does that answer? Is there any more questions on that one?
No, she said you did answer her question when our question came in. So Sharon said you answered the question. So when you do the black keys on the top of the white keys, it doesn't cut between where the black keys are? Is the question from Barbara. And
it cuts. It cuts just up here, around and down. So it cuts up here, there and there. So this is folded here, and then valley folded there, and up the top, and mountain folded there. So you have these white keys anchored all the way to the back between the black keys, and the front of the black keys are anchored to a little bit of each side of the white keys. So does that answer that question? Okay. So if that answers
Diane,
that question, I'll go on.
Diana question.
She says,
Go ahead, Julie.
can you show how you cut the black piece and then add it? So if you go back to make the cut, can you show how you would have the screen to cut the black, and then how you would have it to cut everything, or the score, and then how you would do the cut?
So I think what she's asking is if you weren't doing a print and cut, if you were actually doing a paper piecing, and you were going to cut the black out of the black keys out of black material.
Okay. This is just my opinion, because you've got a fold line here. In my opinion, if I was doing a paper piecing on here, I would have the top of the black key one piece, and the front view, this front view of the paper piecing, another cut, another piece of black glued on the front. So what I would do for that is, these are selected, I'd go copy, and I'd go paste in place. So I would cut these out of black and glue them onto here, and there's a reason why, I'll tell you in a second. I would go to this, select these, and go copy, and go paste in place over here. And so I'd cut these and glue these on here, because if you have a folded piece of cardstock going on to another folded piece of cardstock, the buckle in where it folds will get very bulky and get very creased. So in my experience for making all of these pop-up cards is I cut these for the tops of the black and these for the face of the black. And then I'd cut these in white, the whole thing in white. But if you like the bulkiness of the fold on top of a fold, then you could take the whole thing. But bear in mind it does get very bulky and push up where it is folded here. But even like when I do the backgrounds, if I'm going to have a background here and a background here, even if they're the same color, I will have a little cut between them, so it's not the fold on fold on fold. They'd be cut. This bottom one would be butted up against that, and the top one would be butted up against the center as a separate pieces. So does that answer that question? Is there any other questions?
How would you center
No, we're gonna
one plane over another one in
stop.
PCS?
We're gonna answer those questions. Will be answered later. That's not necessarily related.
Well,
to
this is on the keys.
I know, but I'll handle his two questions separately. Lee asked, Lee asked if it would make sense to cut all in black and then overlay in white. Not so much of whether or not it makes sense. It's what you want to do. If you could do that just as easily as overlaying the black. You could overlay the white instead. But so it's either or. Personally, it'd probably look better. I think it would look better if you did a print and cut, because then you can make the background, the black keys, the white keys, all what you wanted, and not have to worry about pasting on top.
Yeah, but you then have to have a very precise print and cut. I worked all day trying to do that and finally cut my black pieces. I would have saved a lot of time. But some people are expert at print and cut. Maybe, it would look nice that way if you're a machine and you know your machine well and can get that precision. Because you can't really do a bleed on this particular project.
No. That's correct. They have to
Jean
be,
says, can the
precise.
fold of the black keys be solid rather than dashed?
Well, you mean?
The answer is yes. You can make the score lines any way you want. Like Susan prefers not to do the dashed lines for score lines. Andy prefers to do solid lines for score lines. But you can do either you want. But if you do them solid, you don't want to cut. You'd want to make sure that you changed your blade pressure and or depth, because you wouldn't want to cut it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a fold. You'd have a cut.
So all you do there is you go with that selected. You go over here. You go line style, and it'll be dashed. You come down here and you go no dashed. So it'll be solid lines, and you go OK. But with what Brian just said, that I've now gone to using the score tool on my thing, but still leaving as dash lines, not turning them into solid lines, because I find that it gives for the pop-ups, it gives each, because it goes down here, I make it go 3 times at full pressure, and each time it goes down to a dot, it does it 3 times, so it's pushing down. But if it was a solid line and my score tool was taking it all the way across, it wasn't giving as much depth. So I've gone to now leaving them at dashes, but still using my score tool at 3 times going across. So, but yeah, whatever you prefer your score tool to do, whether it be dashed or dotted, it's easy enough done. Is there any other questions on the keyboard?
No, that's it.
I ran into a problem with getting those black keys centered over the white ones.
Did you have the white ones exactly the same size as the black keys?
No, because I did mine custom according to the measurements of my piano keys.
Right.
Then when I was trying to put the key over the space, it depended on how your card was turned as to where they seem to be. How do you center it when you've got an angle on your vision?
Meaning that, what I would have done is just taken the first two, put them right in, just so I was, hang on.
If you want, I can demonstrate that when I get the control back.
Yeah, but
no, it's up to you.
So if you get one in there, right? And because I was and you have to sort of more or less do it by eye because you can't. There's no other way of doing it unless you. No, I take that back. Hang on, we'll cut that. Right. We'll push D, go to this plane. We'll paste that back. Paste in place. And we'll leave them where they are. So I'll join them. Hold that. And we'll go center. This one here. And so that's very center. Because I've joined this one and this one, so I know they're the width I want them apart. So what I did was I selected the top one and selected this center here. So now what I'd do is I'd cut that, take it back to this plane and go paste in place. So now I know that because you're taking it from exactly the right place on this plane, you know it's exactly in the center there. So that's the way to do it. And then, of course, I possibly would rate that you do each one separately than trying to work out the duplicate and these spacings, unless you do your maths and know how far these, because these were 0.5 wide. So your maths from however this was hanging over as to the space. So in that case, because your keys were smaller than mine, it would pay to do it each one, lining up that one between that one and centering them that way. So hope that helps you.
Thank you. And we have another question about the tool that you use to do the scoring.
Yep.
Which tool do you use?
It's blue, and it's they call it the embossing tool, and it's got the scoring tool at each end. And it's got a small one at one end and a big one at the other, and I tend to use the biggest one. And it's a Sing scoring embossing tool.
A Zing embossing tool.
Yeah, that's the blue.
You ordered it where you order the Zing from?
Yes, from K&K.
I use a engraving tool that works very well. Somebody else asked about the time it takes to do the dashes. She said, doesn't it take a lot longer to score a bunch of dashes if you're using an embossing tool?
Well, it might take a bit longer, but it doesn't take that much longer. And when you look at the time spent trying to get the scores done with just, doing it with one dash or one line, and because I put it through, it does the 3 all in one. What's time? You know, when you're trying to fold and it's a pain, or when it's scoring it scores beautifully. It saves a lot more time in the folding. Does that make sense?
I find that cutters cut solid lines much faster than dash lines, so I like Andy's idea. You could actually go through and score the entire design and then come back and just cut the cut lines if you wanted to save time. But if you're doing print and cut, then you have to realign the print head for the cut versus the score, I think, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know if I'm using print and cut, but even if I'm using what you see is what you get, if I haven't printed, it's just a matter of using, you go to, oh, it's not on. You go to use last, and it just, what I do is put the score tool through on and set up my blade to the right place.
Could you say about that again? The use last, can you show where that is?
Yeah. Yes. Right. So if I usually, if I'm not printing cutting, I set up my blade.
For print and cut.
Well, for print and cut or score and cut. No, for print and cut, I never worry about setting up the blade origin. But if I was using what you see is what you get, when I haven't done a print and cut, it was just the scoring and then the actual cutting, right? I would set me blade, and then next do me cutting, and then do me scoring, and then I'd have it on the highest and 3. It'll do that. It's fairly quick, and then I turn off these two and turn back on this one. This one was off, obviously, and these weren't on. These weren't on. Right. So now when this one's on, when I go cut and I go set the blade, I go use last, the blade will go to where I'd set it up for on the side of me mat, where I'd done my scoring, and it will just do the cutting exactly in the right place. So yes, it's going through twice, but I hate using my blade for scoring, and that's my personal preference, and especially when it comes to the paper I'm using for my pop-ups. So, and then I just go use last, finish, and then I'll take this back to the cut, what I do for me cut, and then I just go cut project, and it would cut.
Leslie wants to know, do you set your offset for the scoring tool, reset it when you go to score?
No, I don't, and it's still perfect. They're still in exactly the right space.
Is that because your score tool has the same diameter as your blade holder?
Yes.
Okay, you're talking about two different things.
So.
Your
so
offset.
Your scoring tool is a different diameter.
You're talking about two different things. The offset for when you're talking about the offset right there and the blade offset, that has to do with the blade, and you probably won't notice it if you don't have it at 0 for the embossing tool. But since the embossing tool is centered, the center point is centered on the jaw, then that should technically be 0. But because you're embossing, you're not going to notice it that much. But I think what you're talking about is the diameter. The only thing that would matter on the diameter is where you have your XY, your calibration XY set, if they're different diameter tools. And that would matter, obviously, on a print and cut more, be more critical on a print and cut, but it could affect your leaving everything the same place. But it's not the offset. Just so don't get confused, the offset, the blade offset with what you were talking about, the diameter changes in the tools.
Yep. Yep. But as Brian just said, that I don't change mine when I'm using the score tool to the cutting for these because it doesn't make much difference. It's because of the thickness of the ball on the embossing tool.
Have you tried an engraving tool?
Yeah, it just tore the paper. I've only got the engraving tool for the thing, and it just tore the paper for me.
Maybe at a lighter pressure?
It's still, I didn't need to do that because I found that the embossing tool works and doesn't tear the paper.
That's good to know.
So like even at the start I thought, no, I'll give it a try because people will ask, what about using the blades even on a smaller thing. I still found the paper that the cardstock I am using, still, if I even use just the blade to score at a lighter weight, you still have to put it through twice. It's still some of the, smaller intricate things like just here between the keys, I still found that they were very flimsy and would break. And, like for some of the houses, they would have just broke, as Leslie had discovered with her Chinese house or Japanese house or something, that she needed to use the score tool because it made it too flimsy. So, yeah.
Barbara wants to know which card you use.
It's from Officeworks. It's called Color Copy, and it is, hang on, this one's 200 GSM, and it's from Officeworks, and it's a brand name is Mondi, Mondi. So, and I used to have another one that I liked from Officeworks, but they no longer stock it. So okay. Is there any more questions on that?
No, you can go on to the next.
Okay, so the next question was left over from last week after the recording finished, and Cindy Cade, when we were talking about the chairs, said, what about a rocking chair? Well, I'm not going to go through the process of the chair making because I, done that on a video, and Brian did the chairs last week. But after talking in a chat with both Leslie and Teresa, we came up with this idea. Now, we've got the chair, and we're on the bottommost plane of the front. So what you'll do is you bring in a half circle and you make it about the width of the bottom of the chair. I'll just move that up and move that around so you can see what I'm doing. Now, I'll say take that down to the bottom plane, and then I'll zoom in so I can make sure, and we'll take the snapping off, and we'll move it over so it's Right. Now, you can't leave it at that plane because when you do, I'll show you, and because I know this question is going to come up. When you do it, yes, there's going to be a fold there, but the whole leg isn't anchored to the bottom of the card. But that's okay, because what you do now is put back on a snapping of 1/8 and bring it out, and then you do the same on the other side. You go copy, paste, and arrow key that over. And I'll just put that in position. Oops, not selected. Right, so now they are now in think, but still you can't go with that because they will just drop out. But what Leslie, Teresa and I discovered, that if we select them, we do a join, and then we do a hinge, and we go accept. We do a top hinge, so you can see that they're going to be hinged at this part here. Go accept, and then what they now look like is the front of the chair. So that's okay, they can lift them sort of up when they open them. But then I got to thinking, like Teresa suggested pop dots under here. That will work. But also, back in 2008, I had done butterflies. I just got to find. No. I'd done a lesson on how to make the butterfly's wings pop when you open the card. It's in June 11th, 2008 on my blog. And what I did was I used the heavy plastic of, the bubble wraps of things you buy, and you fold them, you cut them the size of your little up thing here, and you put tape on both sides, and you just, pretending this was the edge of the chair, you just put the fold line to the back of the chair, and you sticky tape that on there, and then you sticky tape the other part onto the base of your card. So it's got that flimsiness enough to fold flat when you're put it in an envelope, but when you open it, it just sort of pops itself. It pops itself up. So it will be the look of a rocking chair. So after a lot of thought, that was the best we came up with. The idea is to not have your bit out from the chair leg, so this still anchors to the bottom of the card. So I hope that helps Cindy and anyone else that would like to make rocking chairs.
When you cut this, do you leave it flapped open like that, or do you set it back closed? Does it matter on the hinge?
Oh no, because
you've got it kind of open right now.
Why isn't that hinged? Hang on, that's not hinged.
That's where she would put the plastic underneath.
Yeah, that's where you put the plastic underneath. This is supposed to be.
No, I mean for cutting, and you use the slider to move it over. Do you have to slide it back down?
No, no, no. It stays there. It stays there, but it's also supposed to be.
Try unhinging it and hinging it again.
Hang on. Cancel. That remains there, so it gets cut just on the oval part and not the other part that should be hinged. It worked for us the other day. Hang on. I've got to think.
Leslie says you might have to clip the bottom.
Yeah, I think we had to cut.
That they're not truly flat.
I think we did, didn't we? Okay, so hang on a second. We go clip. Oops. I don't think I wanted to do that. Hang on. We go select tool, take that down a bit now. And now we go hinge. We go accept. Print preview. We had it working. Yes. So because that's right, we did. Leslie and Teresa and I discovered that we had to trim the bottom of the half circle before we hinged it. So now when it cuts, it's going to cut down here. These are going to be score lines across here, and it's going to be cut around here. So this bit here between these two score lines is what you glue to the back of the other part of your card, your backing of your card. And then under this flap, you'll then put your bit of plastic or your pop dot to have this come up a bit in shape. The plastic did work well. I've got one half made, but I haven't taken a photo of it yet. So I hope that helps. Did that answer your question, Julie, or did I confuse you?
Well, we do go to that hinge thing and slide it so we see how it opens and closes.
Yep.
Can you show us it flapping? Okay. Now my question is, does it matter what degree I have that open or closed when I cut? Will it still cut the same?
It cuts exactly the same.
This is just for this thing here. This degrees here is just visual for designing. This just shows that it's got that thing, so I can have that right back there. It doesn't matter because when it's cut flat. It just cuts like this. So it's just more for designing.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
And for the snapshot, although on the bottom, the snapshot for the bottom, it doesn't work for the snapshot of when you got on the bottom plane and the top plane. But say if I had these hinges indoors, when you do a snapshot, you'll see that the windows and doors for this visual shot is hinged, and it has a little opening.
So Cindy's happy with that.
No,
she said, sorry. She says bravo. Liz says how clever. And then
it was the three of us that come up with it because we were all stumped sort of at times there, but we got there in the end. And I didn't lose sleep over it. I did get a good night's sleep last week, so that was the main thing.
There you go.
So.
Lee, did you get your question answered for the rocking chair hinge? She wanted to know, is that a totally separate cut? I believe that just cuts out of the bottom of the card, right?
Yeah, what it does, okay, accept. What it does, it's preview. What it does, it was a full half circle or thereabouts. So what it does, it gives you the score line, or what is called the hinge line, which is the dotted line for scoring, and it cuts the other edge. So does that answer Liz's question?
That was Lee's question, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Lee's question. Okay. Okay, and the other question...
Well, I actually, yeah, let me jump in here. So I actually did get the email from Bill, and it was what I thought it was, not what you thought, not what Julie and you thought it was. So I'm going to have you hold off on showing, since you already have a video for that.
Yep,
we can do that at the end if we have time. So I'm going to go ahead and take over here.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah. No, thank you for doing that. And everybody liked your
No worries.
your solution there. Yours and Leslie and who else did you say? Teresa's, thank you.
Teresa's.
Yeah. Okay. So the other, so the next questions are set up from, oops, not him. We already did him. From Bill. The first part was he had a project that he had done, and he basically had extra bits all over the place. So I'm going to bring that project in right now and show you how I would do this. It will, okay, so let me bring it, I got to open it up and bring it over. Okay. So here's the card. When he brought in the campfire, he brought it in through SVG. He wanted some other pieces. He wanted some tents and that kind of stuff. And what happened was, and he noticed this when he tried to add a shape. So let me go ahead and add a shape and start talking because this will take a little bit of time here. What do we want? Hexagon. So you can see I double-clicked on it. It should pop right over to that, you know, to the card, copying it in, and it's still waiting. It's doing stuff. And the reason is, well, I'm not sure the exact reason, but I'm speculating that when he brought in the SVG file, it had lots of pieces and was much larger than the area of the card. So while he could see the pieces that were around his visual area, there's all these other pieces hanging around. And I'll show you. If you ever have something like this, it's still waiting. It should pop up here in a minute. If it doesn't, I'll kill it and skip this part of it. But if you ever have a problem with something not working properly like this, where it took that long to copy a piece on there, you can say that's pretty abnormal. The first thing I would do is go and change your file rendering options and make sure that you have scale to page size if larger. Okay, so have that set and save it for this type of debugging, and then go to File and Print Preview. And this will take a little bit of time, but you'll end up seeing what I'm talking about here. And this is a good way to see if you have any extra bits. And we actually ran across this a couple weeks ago with somebody's file, and it was just one bit that was sort of off to the side, and we could actually see it in the window so we could get to it. In this case, I'll show you in a minute here that we're not going to be able to see it even if we scroll way down. So here we have, this is the card. Okay, this is the actual pop-up card, you know, with my little hexagon there, and you can see all this other stuff that came in with the SVG for tents and camping and that kind of stuff. Well, we can't see any of that. So how do you get rid of it? Basically want just that piece there. So I sort of speculated. So first of all, I'm just going to scroll this way down, and even though, you know, we could, on the other example a couple weeks ago, we could see sort of that floating pieces. It wasn't last week. It was either the week before that or even further. But, you know, I can't see that there's anything out of the ordinary, and pretty soon this thing's going to disappear. I'm just scrolling and scrolling down. Yeah, so get to the point where I can't render it, and I still can't see any extra bits. So let me bring it back to normal size. We know that there's all those extra bits because we did the print preview. So let me go ahead and delete this guy, the guy that was highlighted here. And it's going to take I should have just left them actually, sorry, because now it's going to take a little bit of time. And while it's thinking, sorry, I should have let it completely think there. Rather than wait for this, let me just go bring it in again. Okay. So what I speculated was probably whatever plane he was on when he brought in the flame, the campfire, is probably the plane that he brought in the other stuff. So that's where I started looking. And so I'm in the select mode. I press the D key down, and I can select the fire. So I'm on this plane. And just for the heck of it, I went down to, or not just for the heck of it, to see if my theory was right, I went down to select all. And lo and behold, not only do I have the flame and the 2014, but you can see my selection goes way out here somewhere. So I'm going to deselect these two by simply holding the Shift key down and selecting that so it deselects it, or clicking on it so it deselects it. Hold the Shift key down, click on this so it deselects, and you can see I still have a bunch of stuff. I don't know what it is. Well, I know what it is because we saw it in the preview, but it's still selected. So I'm just going to hit the Delete key on my keyboard, and now I'm going to go back to that print preview and see if we got rid of it all. And it comes up much quicker, and now you can see that all I have in there is the actual card, parts around the card. If that had not been the plane, I would have gone through, again, you don't know if it's on a back plane or the bottom plane, but I would go through each one, and basically what I would do is, starting at the back with the plane, if you hold the Control and the Shift key down and then scroll, use your scroll wheel on your mouse, it goes to the next plane that there is something on. If you hold just the Control key down, it goes to either the next snap point or the next place where there's something on it, or intersection on it. So anyway, I would just go through those planes one by one and select all and say, okay, that's good. Go to the next one. These are just intersection lines, so there's nothing to select. It doesn't let you select. Same thing there. And just keep on coming through until I got to another plane where I had shapes on it, which should be coming up shortly. There, that one. And you can see that I can do the select all. That's all good. That's all good. That's the only thing on that plane. And then I'm all the way out front. And then I would do the opposite. Start at the bottom on the bottom plane and go up to each hold the Control and Shift key down as I'm doing my scroll wheel here, and go to a plane that there's shapes on, do a select all, and make sure that only what I can see is actually on that plane. And if there's more on the plane than what I can see, I would just do like I did before, deselect it, and then whatever was selected, I would hit delete. But that's the only way that I could say to try to do it, because you're not, as you could see in this particular case, we couldn't see where all those extra bits were, even though they were out there. So I would caution when you're bringing in an SVG file, to when you copy it in, make sure you see everything on your screen. If it's not, while everything's still selected, when you do the importing of the SVG file, make sure you size it to where you can see everything. Or take what you want out of it, and then while you're still on that plane that you brought it in on, delete everything else, because that caused quite a problem. And I'll show. He also sent the SVG output of that, and you can see that there's quite a lot of stuff there. So let me actually, let's switch over to. So you can see, so here's our pop-up card. So that's your 8.5 by 11. So you can see this lot of junk in here. 31,000 nodes. So it's a lot of information. So you don't really want that. And I think he solved it temporarily by just dumping the SVG and then just keeping this part and deleting everything else. But that's a that was just a workaround. He'd rather not have this in Popup Card Studio at all. So that's how I would do it. I know Bill's not on right now. I don't think he's on. But that was what the problem was and how I would resolve it. So any questions on that?
Yes, Cindy would like you to show again how you deselected one item.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Let me just, I needed to switch something here. Sorry, hang on. So when you're whether in Make the Cut or pretty much any Windows program, when you have something selected, or multiple things selected, like this has two things on it. So if I select all, I have these two things, two shapes. It's the same in this program as it is in Make the Cut, as it is in a lot of other Windows programs, is if you hold your Shift key down and left click on an object, it will either, it basically toggles whether or not that's part of the selection. So if I hold the Shift key down and click on this again, they're both selected again. So it basically toggles whether it's selected or not selected when you hold the Shift key down. And so you can add things to the, to your selection. So that's, again, that's the same as it is in Make the Cut, a lot of other Windows programs. Okay, yeah, thanks, Liz. I had actually seen his email before you sent a message, but thanks for letting me know. So that was the first part of Bill's question. The second part is in Make the Cut, when you're tracing a scene for a background, how you can crop it. So I'm going to do this sort of quickly. We've gone over this a couple times, but there's a nice sort of framework you can do to use this. So let's see. When I try to turn the items black, when I tried the picture, okay, I think I know what he's talking about here. So when you're in Make the Cut, and you bring in, so I'm just going to bring in a picture. Let's bring in the small color one just as a texturized path. Apply. Apply. Bring it in. Okay, so I have a picture and I want some part of this. I don't want the whole thing. I want to crop it. There's a couple different scenarios. The easiest scenario is if I'm either bringing in a basic shape, like a heart, and I want to crop out something heart-shaped from here. So there's one scenario, and there's really not any good spot on this because of where it is. So I'll do it sort of over here. It doesn't make sense, but when you have this, the thing to remember is anytime we're going to do some Boolean joins, or we're actually going to do a join and layer and that kind of stuff. But when anytime you do a join or a weld or any kind of operation where you're combining shapes, the attributes of the shape that is topmost is what's going to the resulting shape is going to take on those attributes. So in the case where we want to keep the image, the raster image, we have to make sure that that's the topmost shape. And so what we want to do here, you can do it within a layer by just simply clicking on this, and you can change the shape, what's on top with the arrows within a layer. But if you have a layer where there's lots of shapes, sometimes that's confusing. So to me, it's easier just to create, make sure your shape or whatever you're trying to get out of, crop out of your image is on a separate layer, and then just make sure that layer is below, once you center it where you want it, make sure it's below your in this case, the raster image. We're going to select both of those, so we're going to select all. We're going to do a join. A join, which looks like it puts a hole in his head. But then we're going to turn around and immediately do a split. A layer. And it works in the layer will work in the scenario where the shape that you're cutting, whatever you're cropping, is completely contained within the image you're cropping. So if you're doing a true crop, that's the easiest way to do it. You select where you want your crop to be, you do the join followed by a layer, and then you can separate the main layer with the other, the other piece. Get you two results, and then if you want to keep this one, that's fine, but this is what you were after, so you can delete the other one if you don't need it. In the case where it overlaps, like say I wanted sort of, part of his face in there. Again, let me turn this back to green so we can sort of see through here. So see how the outline is going to be out of here. This poses a little bit of a problem because if I just do a join, so let me go ahead and move this layer down below, select all, do a join, I get this weird thing, and then if I do a layer, it's not going to give me what I want. In fact, in this case, it doesn't let me do it. I can do a break, and I get what I want, sort of. but of course, because there's no other outside there, this is outside the original shape, it's translucent. So if that's not what you want, you'd actually want to put some sort of, whatever you want the color background, like let's say you wanted white, you'd actually have to put that down there first. So let me go back here. So this area stays whatever, since there's no texture here, it's going to be no texture here as well. It's outside of the shape. So you can try to do, let's do this. Do I have two of them now? No. Okay, so I'm going to select, so I have two of those. So I'm going to select one of those, and a weld. And then that'll create the same thing. But then you could do the join or the break, if that makes sense. So let me do that. Join. Why did it do that? That's interesting. Break. It must have done something wrong there. There's the original with the extra, and there's the extra. Okay, I must have duplicated him at one time. Sorry. Undo, undo, undo. If you wanted that actually to be white instead of translucent, you'd have to add something like a background. So we could do a square or rectangle just all the way behind him. Make him white, and I know the heart's white right now, but that's okay. In this case, I want to do just the rectangle and the dog, and in this case, I want to do a weld. And then what I get, sorry, that didn't work either. Oh no, before you wouldn't want to do a weld. You want to take that and do the texture snapshot. So what you're creating is basically a new texture that has white as the background. So let me instead of white, let's make it brown. Yeah, well, just so you can see it. So again, selecting just the background and the raster image, you can do the texture snapshot, which takes everything that's selected and turns it into a raster image. Then if you did your, let me just make this a different color so we can see it a little bit better. Then if you wanted the heart around his eye, still below, I can do select all, join, and layer, and then this piece has that, the eye and the whatever background you wanted to put in there. So those are a couple different scenarios, but the easiest, if it's true cropping and it's totally within the image, you just create the image, create the shape that you want to crop the image to, line it up where you want it on the image, make sure it's below the image, select both of them, do a join, Control J, and then follow that up immediately with a layer, Control L. And then you'd come up with two shapes, and you can do whatever you want with either of the shapes. Okay? So Bill, I'm hoping, Liz, do you know if that was his question? Because I know you were helping him with something on one of his threads. But I think that's what his question was here. You can't just crop, so let's take this where say, oh, we wanted to crop this. Obviously, if I do any of the arrows, I'm changing I'm cropping it in a sense, but I'm moving it around. So if I'm doing from the top down, not a problem. If I do it from the bottom up, actually, it looks like it works up both ways. Well, that's good. You might have fixed that. But you're really not cropping it. I mean, you are sort of, but not really. And sometimes if you do an erase or you're doing changes, you'll notice the image is actually offset within your new shape, and that has to do with how things are done in the background. So, okay, thanks, Liz. Okay, so that should answer. So, Bill, when you see this recording, if that didn't answer your question, then send me an email. Oh, and if you want to lose, okay, so if you want to lose just the section at the top, I think that's alone. let's see, present scale, but lose this section. I don't know what you mean by along the top, but if I wanted to actually crop, so let me get this back to normal here. I guess we're pretty, there we go. So let's say that we had forget this guy. Let's say that was the image we brought in, and we wanted to crop it closer, to just within here. Then you could still do a square as the shape, and just move that shape wherever you wanted it. Let me go to. I always like working in sorry, I could actually leave it down there. Now, go back to this. If you wanted to crop it in a rectangular fashion, you could create a square, bring it in, line it up exactly where you wanted it cropped. So we want a little bit wider here. Come on, there we go. And maybe just below the collar there or something like that. Still the same idea. So we take that, make sure that's below, select both by doing a Control A in this case, because those are the only two things on there. I'm going to do the join, or Control J, followed up immediately by the layer, or Control L, and then I have the piece cropped and the piece not cropped. And if you don't want this piece, you select it, hit delete. So we're getting quite a lot of use out of this puppy dog here. Okay, so let me go back.
Diane wants to know, is that how they get the clouds in the background of their pop-up cards using Boolean join?
I don't. So people that do print and cuts or that have stuff on their pop-up cards or even the regular cards, you can bring any kind of texture you want. So yeah, it could be clouds, it could be grass. Susan, I don't know what you use, but if the image
I use pictures behind.
Yeah. So
I don't Boolean join. I just layer them.
Okay. Yeah. So you can do that too. So let me undo this. Sorry.
Brian, back on that one.
Yep.
Can I just say that, like when you did the heart, you've got to tell them that heart, even though it's only a piece of the dog, is a full picture. So if I do hundreds of hearts to print out, it's a huge file.
Right.
Do you know?
Yep. Yeah. And so I think we had mentioned this again last week as well. Just anytime you do textures, so like let's say I did this, I wanted part of the eye for something that's part of his nose. I don't know. We'll just get down here just to be non-confusing here. So even though I do this, select all, join, layer, and let's say I get rid of this guy, and now all I have is this. This takes up as much memory as that original image does. So then if I go and duplicate this, say, because I want to do a bunch of hearts to print out and cut. Sorry, I want to duplicate.
Don't do too many.
Yeah. Let's try this again. Duplicate. Why is my...
Crash your machine.
Duplicate. There we go. I want to go down. Let's do 3 rows by 5 or 4. So now I have 12 copies. I'm actually using up 12 times the amount of memory. So if you wanted to, and we talked about this, I think we did a circle last time of somebody, and the more you have, even though it looks like you just have a small piece, you're actually internally it's keeping a copy for each of these pieces. Because I can then go on and do something else different with this. I could change the gamma on it. I could change rotate it or whatever. So it keeps a copy of internally memory-wise. It's multiplied by the size of the original image. So you don't want to do that. But in the case of, let's say, so this we had a dog that was not, not a full background, but I could bring in, so let me just sky image. So I could bring in, I don't want something huge here. Don't they have anything small? Of course not. Okay, let's bring this one in. Boy. Okay, let's do this. Sorry, because I don't want to do a big one here. Oops. Search tools, not type size, medium. Okay. Okay, so here's one. That's still not too bad, but copy image, bring it in, paste, 255, texturize, apply, import, finish tracing. So now I can make this, and I would want him on top, probably. I don't want this guy above him because, again, if he's below it and I turn it to contrast, this is how it would look. Oh, he is on top. Sorry. So let's do the bottom and left. So there I'm not doing a Boolean join, but when I print it, it would look like it was, right? So that's how you could do that. And you could have multiple pieces then. Multiple different, like you could have the dog, you could have a cat, you could have whatever else penguin if you're doing a pop-up card. Actually, that's not bad looking. Anyway, so you can do that. Obviously, this picture was so small that it's pixelated now, but you get the idea. So any other questions on the cropping texturized shapes within Make the Cut? Or the previous...
Yes, Liz wants to know, why does MTC do that with images, keep the full image data?
Andy would be the one to answer that question specifically, but the main thing you have to remember, this was originally written as a SVG program. He added images, textures to fit that. It's put in afterwards, so it wasn't designed to be a raster image program. And he has tightened up a little bit, so one of the options in Make the Cut is, right now we're looking at not a full image, it's sort of a low-res image, but you can turn that, so this saves time and processing power, I should say, when you're dealing with the images. But if you want to see the full-blown resolution, you'd have to turn that off, but that will slow it down. And it's just because it's not a raster image program. It was never meant to be a raster image program. Raster imaging was added afterwards because people wanted to do it, and actually it turned into a whole bigger thing than originally what people wanted it for. Turned out that nobody uses for that. I can't remember what it was, but they use it for print and cut and other things and that kind of stuff. So that's the main reason. If you want more detail, Andy could answer that. But again, it wasn't written as a raster image editor. So I want to make sure I turn this back off before I forget. Sorry. Turn this back on. Okay. Other questions on that? Yep.
Yeah, I sent you an example of how I do my cloud backgrounds.
Okay.
And Make the Cut file.
Okay. Oh, there you are. Okay. So this is, let me open it up.
So the clouds and the ground are full halves.
Right. So this is a separate image, and this is just the green background. It's a separate image. And then, of course, the color of the benches that she's going to cut out. So when you put it all together, sorry, what's this up here? Oh, that's your reg mark. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. Print preview. That's what I wanted to do. So that's how it'll come out when you print it. And then, obviously, once she cuts it, there'll be cut lines around here, fold lines, mountain, and there'll be a valley fold across here for the center.
It all depends on the which layer you have on top of which layer.
Right. So this would change completely if we move this on top. Let's find this. So if I moved him all the way up top, this would mess things up. Because then when I printed it out, your bench back and part of your arms would turn, would be the sky instead of being the background. So you still have to layer it like you would, even if you were working in a raster image program, you'd want to layer it, to have the background down further than the foreground so that it turns out something like this. Thank you, Susan. Okay, any other questions on that? The other thing I wanted to show you real quick, this is back to before I go on to the other question, because this was sent by somebody that had done what we were talking about, the earlier one. So this, she did a rough, this is someone's grandchild. Excuse me for a minute. Hopefully I'm muted in time. Didn't want to sneeze there. Anyway, so she created this cutout, similar to how we talked about in one of the first parts of the webinar, from this image. So she did it in such a way that it's nice and it looks nice when you put it all together. It's probably a lot of work. I can't tell how many layers she has here. 5, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like 5. So, it can get complicated. But it looks nice when you put it all together. So thank you. That was, who was that? She said I could show it to you. So that was from Brenda. Is it Brenda? I'm drawing a blank here. Why am I not seeing the name? Barbara. Sorry, Barbara gave that to me. So this is just an example of what you can do with that first technique that I showed you. These guys here. Okay, so the questions. Next question. It's possible to change the font. Okay, so the first part of Evelyn's question is how do you get, she wants to put happy birthday on the bottom half of a card, not to pop up, but rather just on the bottom plane, right? Happy birthday cut from the bottom half of the card base, not from the box, or not to box it. And so I think Susan has shown this, but basically we'd want to be on the bottom plane, the horizontal planes, and you'd want to go down to the bottom by putting in 0 there. And then you could bring in your text, and I think she said she wanted, let's do impact or something here. Actually, you probably want to have, in this case, you probably want some sort of stencil font, and I'll show you why here in a minute.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Just a shortcut. Those comma boxes, if you type in, if you want impact, type in IMP, and it'll take you right to impact.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know that. So if you're looking for a font real quick, highlight it and then type in or whatever.
Yeah. Gotcha. Like that.
And it'll remember. So if you want to get to impact, if you type in IMP, the first 3 letters,
right,
it'll take you right to it. So just a heads up, make things go quicker.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. So now, when you're on the text or on the text tool, you want to click, and you want to do happy birthday. And, oops, go back to select, and then you can move this around to wherever you wanted. So let me scroll down so you can see here. The reason you would want to have some sort of stencil font or make it a stencil font is because if, like the B, if that wasn't a stencil font, it would just look like a blob. It would look like a figure 8 with the centers cut out and one side flat. Because these pieces, if they weren't connected through this stenciling type of technique, they would fall out. So the B would, the things that you see black here would fall out, and everything in the center would fall out too. So something like this, because you're cutting it out on the bottom, there's nothing to hold it in, so you want a stencil font basically, and then that will cut in the bottom, and then you place it wherever it is that you want it on the bottom of the card. He didn't really say exactly, where on the bottom half of the card, but that'll do it. Will that display it in the preview mode? Yes. Yes, Susan.
Ryan, but if if she doesn't want a stencil font, she can just, if she's gluing it into a card, into another card, she can just glue the
Right.
circles of the things in.
Okay, that's a good point. So let me go ahead and do that again, and we'll use impact like I wanted to do. Oops. Let's try this again. Impact. No, I didn't type fast enough. So let's just make this bigger. Oops, not that much bigger. So what Susan is saying, so even though when you cut this out, these pieces would fall out, you could save them, and then if you have a backing card to this, you could glue those pieces in. So if you did a if you did a preview of this, it would look like I was trying to explain before, sort of the blob, the whole outline. Everything would be empty on the outline. You see how the B's, the birthdays, the P's, the A's are just, you lost all those pieces. But you wouldn't actually lose them. You'd still have them, but then you'd have to glue them on the backing. That's what you were talking about, right, Susan?
Yes. Yes.
So when this cut out, you would want to, take these little pieces and then glue them on, once you glued this piece on a backing card, then you'd want to glue the inner pieces on there if you wanted to not have a stencil font like that. So that's a good point. I'm lazy. I don't like to glue all those little pieces, so I'm happy with the stencil font. Okay, her second part of the question was, is it possible to change the fonts to italic or another font without deleting the text and starting over? And the answer is no. Just like Make the Cut, once you put the font, once you bring the font in or the characters in, it becomes a shape. And so you can't come back here and say, I want to go to text and then change the attributes of this. You'd have to actually, change the font, change, the bolts, change it to italics, and then bring it in again. Sorry, I moved it all the way back there, so let's put it here. So now I have it italics. And that's basically the same as, in Make the Cut. Let's actually, we'll put it on here. So if you didn't like that, you'd actually have to, bring in a whole new text. Yes. So that, Evelyn, if you're on, hopefully that answered your question. Any questions regarding the text or the, placing it on the bottom or changing the text?
I don't see any.
Okay.
Not related.
Okay. So then the last question is from Di. Okay. And this was sort of answered. In fact, I think she mentioned earlier that it answered her question. But basically she's saying, oh, so if I brought in, so let me actually bring in, oops. Now let me open up Susan's again here. If I bring in somebody else's, well, I only have the yeah, I can't do it because Susan, you sent me the MTC, not the PCS. So let's see who I have here. Recent projects. Let's do the cake.
But you use that to answer the second part of that question.
Yeah, well, yes. So the question is like if you wanted to, so basically if you want, so the question is, let me get back to the questions, was when you, so you have PCS, but you want to create in basically something, either doing the piecing like we talked about or the print and cut from the PCS. If you didn't design it, could you still bring in the shapes? And you can do that. It is a little bit different depending on what it is. Like these were anchors. So if I select this piece and do a Control-C and then go to Make the Cut, sorry, go to Make the Cut. Wrong Make and Cut. There we go. Come on. There we go. And Control-Shift-V, it brings it in, you know, as it was created. Let me get back here. So even though when we look at this, it's got all these cutouts because of these other things here, when you do the print and cut here, print preview here, you'll actually see that that piece is here. And then you'd have to actually remove this piece. Like if you wanted this to be one color, these to be a different color, and this to be another color, you'd actually have to bring pieces in. And Susan has done a video on this, because when I brought this piece in, I got the whole piece all the way to the back, right? So I'd have to bring in this piece as well. And we'd have to, let's see, tops, vertical. And I'm just going to keep those so I have the originals. But then I'd want to do the Boolean join of this like that. So then I could have that one color. I could have this another color. We can get rid of that. Actually, I'm still missing something, aren't I? Oh, yeah, I'm missing something here. Sorry. Let me bring in the original project here. I forget whose project this was, so I apologize for using this, but it was on the forum. So if I save as, if I do a, where is it? Export. Thank you. SVG, right? And actually, one other thing I have to do here is I don't want my rendering to be, sorry, I don't want to scale it at all. I only did that for that debugging thing. So, export as SVG file, and we'll call it cake 3. And somewhere we get back to our project, bring in the cake. Then you can see, oops, we don't need this piece, sorry. That was the original piece, we don't need that. And Susan's better at demonstrating this, and she's done this. I just want to move this whole thing up here. So let's make this, we'll make this, I don't know, red, and this maroon. Anyway, so you put this piece, you line it up to where the cuts are going to be here, and this one down here, and we'll make this white. I probably didn't line those up very good. Oops. Up. And then this one. Let's do 0.5. Now we do a print preview. So that would print like that, and then when you actually cut it, your cut lines and score lines would be in place there. So even though I didn't design this PCS file, I can still go and create pieces either as part of a print and cut, or I could then cut this out of whatever material I wanted, and then glue it on, paper piece it on, whatever it is that you wanted to do. So, and I think you sort of said that you had gotten the results of that, or you had gotten your question answered. Let me go back to your question. During the first, when Susan was explaining with the piano keys. And so that was, let's see, so we have somebody else made the file. Yeah, so you can do it. You can do it as a color piece cut out, or you can do it as a print and cut. You do not have to do it ahead of time in PCS. So that's that question.
I have a question on that one that you've got on the screen right now.
Yes.
On those anchors, is there a way to draw that anchor shape and make the cut and then insert them, or do you have to draw each one of those special shapes individually as anchors?
You could. So anchors are not special in the sense that you don't have to. All the so in PCS, these anchors here, you could copy those in. Let me get back to normal here. You could copy these in any shape that you wanted. So let's just take this, let's say, and bring it in, make the cut. And let's say that I wanted it. Now, the only caveat is, so I could go in here and edit. Well, these are all flattened already, so it's not as easy when you're trying to do it, reverse engineer it. But if you could create these, you could create a weird shape in here, as your anchor, and then bring it in. But what you'd have to do then is, when you were, let me do this. You'd have to make sure that you were on the right plane. So let's just say we didn't have this anchor or this anchor. So I could bring in my shape, which is going to be in the upper left-hand corner now. So let me bring that down. Sorry. Come on. Drag. There we go. Too far. But then you'd have to be responsible to make sure that you lined it up on the, in the right spot vertically and horizontally, and it was on the plane. So you could use this to drop it down onto the right plane. And as long as you had the right size and lined it up left to right, okay. And it's not so much you have to have it perfect, but if you did move it over a little bit like that, well, that would interfere with the other ones. But then your fold lines would be, your fold line would only go from there to there. So if I lined this up, I should have checked that first. So like here, and I didn't line it up. You can see I have a cut line and cut line. So all it is that it's harder for you, if you don't create those within Popup Card Studio, with the snapping to the where you need to anchor it, either the horizontal or the vertical planes, you have to make sure you do that manually, and that can be quite difficult. In this case, this might not be perfectly flat when I brought it in. So maybe what I need to do is stretch it a little bit, and I have noticed that on some things, that even though they're flat in make the cut, when you copy them over, that they may not be exact. Actually, I should sink this down to the bottom first.
And two, Leslie just said, and I was just about to say, that if you're putting pylons in like this, you make them from the back towards to the front, so the set order is in the right way, so any overlaps, they cut in the right order.
Yeah, and that makes it easier in the sense that it's less work for you if you design it that way. But you can always change the Z order. So that in itself isn't a major issue. Let's see if I got it right here. Yeah, so I have it. So, once you have it, and make sure that you have a flat top and flat bottom, or, flat back and flat, front, if you're doing anchors this way, you can create those and copy and paste them, But again, it's just a little bit more work to line them up and make sure that you get them exactly where you need them, if that makes sense.
I don't see how you could get score lines at the top if you did it that way, because you wouldn't have the red lines and the blue lines to guide you.
Well, no, that's why. But you make sure. I just did. I mean, I just made this one. I stretched it, flattened, cropped it. Then I used this tool to bring it down to the bottom. So I was doing the bottom. Oops, but I was already down to the first one.
But also, all these pylons are an inch high because there's an inch from the bottom, from that cake to the top of the cake. So all you're doing is you're copying and pasting and just moving them
Yeah, once you line up the first one, it'll be the same. It just be on different planes. I mean, front and back planes. But if this one lined up and I copied and pasted and moved it over here by just using the right arrows, then everything should still line up. I don't know if that's what I did or not. Let's see. Yes. So, I copied and pasted. I could even mirror it at this point. If I wanted this weird shape to be the opposite way on this side, I could simply mirror that as well. So the answer is you can do it. You can create the shape and make the cut. But I have noticed that, and I'll work with Andy on this because I don't know if it's the way I'm doing it or not. But like even though we brought this in to make the cut originally, and this was, well, actually this is curved, so I must have hit something when I did it. But I was working on something. So let's see if I can actually.
But it's even like the basic shapes. If you alter the basic shapes, the bottom and top aren't straight again. You have to go and check, as I showed with the rocking chair.
Right.
I have
right.
to crop it.
So yeah. So anytime you manipulate it, you might. Sorry, is that the right? Yeah. Delete node. Neutralize segment. Convert to path or straight line. Yeah, and this is even a weird height now. But just out of curiosity, let's go to this guy. Delete the drag, and I'm only going to worry about the bottom right now and just see if that turns up to be perfectly horizontal. And see that case, even though I changed the top and bottom to a straight line, it still came in, and it's probably not perfectly flat. Oops. Close. So I'd want to, well, let's just crop the bottom and move it down again. And, sorry, select, drop. And now it's not long enough, but let's just see if that should fix that problem. So it's just harder to do. I mean, you might, if you can use the built-in, so it did make the fold line there. So then I'd have to crop this and bring this up. It just, you always, if you're going to use it as an anchor, your top and bottoms have to be perfectly flat in Popup Card Studio. I guess the bottom line. So yes, you can get the shape from anywhere, but the tools that you have in Popup Card Studio, do it once in Popup Card Studio, and then just do a copy and paste. You still have to worry about lining it up, but as long as you're going, from left to right here, or from back to front, if I do the back one, create it exactly the way I want it, copy it, and mirror it if I want for this side, and then just keep on coming up. It just is. It's going to take you a little bit longer because you've got to line it up. You've got to do the lining up horizontally in this case. So that's why unless you're doing special anchors, it's easier just to use the quad tool and do it each one. So thank you to whoever did that cake. I forget whose it was. Somebody from the forum.
It was Leslie.
Leslie,
That
thank
was
you.
Leslie.
It was Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie. I just happen to have that one handy, so.
Nan has a quick question.
Yes.
Does Andy plan to use the same shortcut keys in the Popup Card Studio as in Make the Cut?
I am encouraging him to do so. I would imagine he would. but you know.
Well, paste in place is different now, right?
The there is
now we don't have paste in place.
Well, there's just paste. So in here, when you do a paste, if it's coming in brand new, it's going to go in your upper left-hand corner of whatever plane you're on. If you're doing text, it's going to be the start of it's going to be wherever you click your cursor on. If it's like if I made a copy of this and then changed the plane, let's change the plane to the front one here. Oops. And just did a control V. There is no paste in place, so I just do a paste. It's going to be in the same position as it was on this plane as far as X and Y. It just looks like it's different because it's, visually it's out further. But, front to back, this is exactly, if I look at this, 1.875 and 0.6875, and I go back to this one, 1.875, 6.875. So the pasting is pasting it in essence in place in the same size, but not in, like, it's not going to paste it back in the plane that you originally copied it from. It's going to paste it on your current plane, even if that plane is horizontal instead of vertical, but it's still going to do that XY on that plane, that in this case the 1.875, 5.937. Actually, that was different because the Y, why is that different? There's a reason for it, I'm sure.
You've got one shape fighting against the other shape.
Well, no. Yeah, but the actual location of that shape shouldn't matter. When I change the Z order of it, it's because I'm on a horizontal plane now instead of vertical plane. But if I were to do that copy again down here, it would match the one up there. So it's the Y because I'm on a horizontal plane instead of vertical plane. But it's in essence in that same spot, right? It's the difference. It's hard to explain, but it's going to paste it in the same position relative to the plane that you're on. Normally, when you're cutting and pasting, you're not doing changing between vertical and horizontal planes, but.
Diane would like to know if you can answer the second half of her question about resizing the Popup Card Studio design in Make the Cut.
Oh, I missed that one. So yes, yes. So the question there is, so let me bring in Susan's. Let me just go back to that question again. Thank you. Well, you had multiple questions, so just wondering. Yeah. So this part of it, can you resize the card once you export it into SVG? And the answer is yes. You can do it. So let me bring in Susan's card and Make the Cut that she just showed us, or that I just showed you. I can do that. I can select everything and cut it smaller or cut it larger. It doesn't matter because everything's proportional. Your cuts, you just have to have the material to cut it out on, and your cutter has to handle whatever size you're cutting it. But yeah, you can change the size easily. And in fact, you can even from the Popup Card Studio, you can change the size. Well, relatively. I mean, obviously you can change the size through the global operations, which we've seen. But then in your rendering options, if you design something but you wanted to fit it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, you can scale this page, to page size if it's larger, or scale it up if it's smaller. And so if I picked a so let's do both of these and save these for a moment. So if I do a print preview right now, I have letter print preview. I have letter. I think I have letter. Oh, I shouldn't have done this one. This is the big one. Sorry. Let me just cancel this. Actually, I just deleted everything here. I think I did too many undos here. Okay, now we can do it. So if I do a print preview, I have, everything fits there. And what do I have currently set up? I have letter size. So if I said, oh, I want to cut it out on ledger size, 11 by 17, and I have a mat that can handle that, and I have my rendering options set to either scale to larger, scale it, so if it's larger, scale it down, or if it's smaller, scale it up, which is what I have it currently set at. Then when I do a print preview on Ledger, it's going to scale it up so that it fits. Now in this case, because the ratios are different, I have more at the top and bottom than on a letter page, but it'll do it. So if you're just changing the size to fit on whatever material you're on, you can do that at your rendering options, in terms of printing page size. But you can easily do it. Once you switch it over to SVG, you can do whatever you want with it. You can make it bigger, smaller. You could even stretch it. Now, the design may not look nice when you do that. So let's put it there. So let's select all. I think everything. Oh, it won't stretch because that image is the wrong size. But I could stretch it that way. But all your designs are going to change because of that. But you can stretch it. These are just cut lines now, so you can do just like you can do and make the cut with anything you bring in. You can make it larger, smaller, stretch it, rotate it. I don't know why you'd want to rotate it, but you could. So the answer is yes. Okay. So let me go back to one of the earlier questions from Ira. So we showed, oh, he left, but I'm still going to go through this. We talked about the delete functions. There's a couple ways you can delete. You can use the delete key, which I use. You can do the edit cut, which will delete it. It'll actually copy it to your clipboard too. So you wouldn't want to do that if you had something in your clipboard that you wanted to keep for some reason. But the cut is one of the ways to do that. His other question was sort of how to delete. I'm gathering a shape from within a shape. So he's saying how to delete, let's say, a swirl inside a shape. So let's just bring in two shapes. So let's say we had a star, 10-point star. Actually, let's create a new one so we're not. Great. So we're going to bring in a star. And I don't think we have any swirls in this one. Do we have any swirls? Generics. Oh, that's miscellaneous.
No.
No swirls.
Oh, yes, there is. Down in the middle.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's say that we wanted the swirl cut out of the star. Sorry. Is this a cut line or is this an actual shape? Let's look and make the cut real quick. I think that's just a line, right? Yeah. That's just a line. So let's fatten this up a little bit. Okay, accept, and we'll take this shape. Oops. Control C, Control V, and we'll bring that down and bring the size up. Oops. So if you wanted the swirl cut out of the star, it would be just like in Make the Cut or any of the other projects that do this. So let's select both of them. And let's say we wanted to line it up. So we wanted the swirl centered in the star vertically and horizontally. We could do them individually like that, or we could have just as easily done, since we wanted both vertical and horizontal, we could have just as easily done the stack, which is this one here. But anyway, once it's done that, let me actually delete this too. Cut-wise, it's going to cut exactly whether I join it or not. So if I look at the print preview, it's going to have cut lines there. But visually, when you look at this, it's kind of hard to, depending on how many of these you have, you might say, well, I'd really like to see that there's a hole in the star where the swirl was. So in that case, you'd want to do a join. So you could do a select all and either do a join, or you could actually do a, which is in this case would be the same thing, would be the Boolean join, difference. Same thing. But then, even though it looks the same in print preview, so it's going to cut exactly the same, at least now visually, when you look at it, you'll see that there's a hole, a hole there in the middle of the star. Where if before the join, and of course this star is going to fall because there's no anchors on it, so don't look at that portion. So before I did the join, if I did a preview, I don't think the preview, the preview doesn't show the hole there. Because even though the cut lines are there, it doesn't know that there's a hole there because you didn't do the join. So for visual sakes, for cutting sakes, this and joining it are exactly the same as far as cutting, but they're different. This is before the join, this is after the join, so visually it looks different. So that's that question. So Ira, if when you see this posting recorded, if that didn't answer the question you wanted, let me know. We showed, and that sort of answered the other one, which was the centering a plane over another, or centering a. Well, he wanted one plane over the other, but Susan had actually done that with the piano keys. Okay. Okay, so I answered those questions. What other questions do we have?
Shirley wants to know if you could hinge or leave part of that swirl and bring the outer.
Yeah, so in this case, the way it's written the way it is right now, I would not be able to, whether or not it's in part of the star or not, because if I cut this. Well, let me just do it as it is. So select this, and we'll do the hinge. And it's going to hinge somewhere. Oh, so there must have been just enough here, even though it's round. But if we look at print preview, sorry, let's accept. Yeah, you can hardly even see where it is. So there's just a bare amount there. So if you really wanted to hinge it, you'd actually probably would want to crop part of it so that you had a nice, a flat edge. Let me take my snapping. Actually, let me make this larger. Take that off, but we'll also make this larger. So I'd want to crop a little bit of a flat edge there. So then when I did then select that and do the hinge, then when you do the, then when you did the print preview, you would see that there actually be a score line there. Same thing, I could do the top, I could do part of it, I could flatten that a little bit, but you wouldn't, if I flatten on the inside, I wouldn't, so the hinging you can either do top, left, top, bottom, left, or right. So you basically have to be at the top of the shape, the left of the shape, the bottom of the shape, or the right of the shape. So I couldn't hinge it, on this part of the swirl through the hinge method. I could take it and, create a line there. So, cut out part of a line and put it in there and change it to a hinge line. It'd probably be easier to do that in Make the Cut. But, the hinge is very specific in Popup Card Studio. Is pretty much, it assumes that you're going to have a, it's actually made for windows and doors and that kind of stuff in the architecture sense. So it made sense that it was either top, left, top, bottom, left, right.
Leslie wanted to know, can you cut everything except the card base in Popup Card Studio? Is there any way not to cut the card base?
Yes. So in Popup Card Studio, so if I look at print preview right now, so I'm still on Ledger, so it's kind of a weird shape here. But obviously it shows that my card base is this black rectangle cutout. And that is one of the rendering options. And I can say that I do not want to render the outer card cut lines. And then if I look at print preview, it will not do that. It'll just do the fold lines, the cut lines. So So if all you want to get rid of is the outer card, then that's easy to do. That's the render options. Just render. This is normally selected on. Just make sure it's selected off. I'm going to move my things back to the defaults here. Okay, so that should have answered that question. I can leave one of the swirl and bring the other piece. Okay, just did that. Could you hinge from one of the ends? So, and Shirley, you're talking about like this end right here of this. It probably will not, because if I select the top, it's going to be it's going to select the top of the whole shape. So where's the top of from the render from this extents line? But let's just try that real quick. So I now select this and do hinge and say top. Yeah, it's gonna try to do it right at the very top. Yes.
Try turning it around so that the end is up near the top, and then do a sort of like an angle cut on the end.
You mean rotate it so that's above everything else?
Yep.
And then
like that.
And then we'll crop this.
It'll be an angle, but
yeah. So yeah, you could do that if you.
Try.
Oops, sorry. Select hinge top, and yes. So that would work, but your only thing holding it there is that. I know, except.
Can it hinge from the star?
If you do it, that's a good question. So let's undo this. Let's make the star really big. Make this bigger. Actually, let's rotate it first so we can get that ready. You wouldn't be able to once you. Actually, I want to crop it before I'm in the star here. So I wouldn't be able, if I did a join with the star, I wouldn't be able to hinge it unless I went and changed the line. What do I do? Join here, because it's in essence cut out already. But if I didn't join it, I could take that and do the hinge, and it should hinge within the star. But I don't think it would render. Preview. Yeah, so I have my hinge line there, my score line there. But then if I rendered it, I don't think you would. Oh, I don't have it very. Oh yeah, it showed it. Yeah, so that shows it. So I forget what I have this at. Hinge, I have it at what? 22 degrees. It must be out, right? Yeah. So let me zoom in here. And then preview. You can see it a little bit better. So yes, it will, on the rendering it will show that, but you can't do the join then. You have to do the hinge, but it will still, in essence, show you the rest of it as sort of a join. You'll see the holes in there. So yes, you can do that.
Can you hinge in two places?
No.
Like
well,
butterfly wings?
No, but you could make two
double doors.
You'd have to leave a space between the body and the two wings to hinge them up. So you have your body, like I did the bottom of the rocking chair. You have the body, and then you have a space between, and then you have the wings hinged up.
Yeah, or, and so what you're sort of saying here, let's, oops. Okay, let me get rid of the star because it's not going to make sense here.
You have to erase the center, then they could hinge from the center.
Well, you could crop from the center. In this case, the spacing. So let's say I wanted these to be, weird butterfly wings, right? I'm just going to scale these down a little bit so we can see them here. So this one I could select and say hinge bottom, and this one and accept. This one I could say hinge top, accept, and then when I did a preview, actually not going to be able to see it very well with the shadows. So let me change the let's do about 20 degrees, 25 degrees. Oops. Accept. Okay. So this would be, the butterfly would be flying sideways here, but you get the idea here. So I have a hinge. It's actually really hard to see with the shadows and stuff. But this is hinging up, and this is hinging down. Oh, I'm sorry. Part of the problem is I shouldn't have these on this plane to do that. So let's do this. Control C, or Control X, Control V. Now preview. It would look a little bit better. Oh, except it doesn't work on the back end. So let's do this one more time. Control X. Let's do Control Z. Let's bring it out. Let's do 1/8 of an inch. Actually, that should work. It doesn't make some sense in terms of a pop-up card, but you can see that I have, hinged at the center, opposite of each other. So if you imagine if you made these wings, and then had a flat spot for the, where it would quote unquote connect to the body, or let's do even something ridiculous here. Not ridiculous, but generic. We'll make a flying heart. And in this case, we'll do it, oops, come on. Hinge. So what we'll actually do is we'll do a cropping right down the center. And you probably want it wider than this, right? So now I have my two pieces. I do a split. And this one I would say hinge left, accept. This one I'd send hinge right. Oops. Sorry, hinge, not fold back. Hinge right. Let's get rid of these so they don't confuse us. And there I have, a flying heart, flapping heart. Okay, so let me do this because I know we could go on here forever. We are currently quite long. So I'm going to stop. Let me just check something here. Yeah, so I'm going to stop the recording.